Multiple winter storms are on the way. For those of you who enjoy the winter weather, you will certainly appreciate this forecast. For those who do not, we will get through this together, regardless. The first winter storm is a weekend system that is now moving into the picture. Already, over a foot of snow is forecast across areas of the Midwest. We will first cover the specific details of that storm, and then we will discuss a time frame for next week that also carries a risk of winter weather. To conclude our video, we will discuss this unusual pattern as a whole and what it might bring as we progress deeper into the month of December. I have reason to believe that we could continue to experience these intrusions of very cold air, and of course, if that meets up with moisture, we will continue to have chances for winter storms. We will cover that at the very end of the video. My name is Mitch, and I wish you a good Thursday evening. I hope you all have had a wonderful Thanksgiving, and a happy Thanksgiving to you. I am very thankful for everyone on this channel, and I truly appreciate you giving me a platform to talk about what I love, which is the weather. Please subscribe if you have not already. You can like the video if you find it helpful. If anyone has anything I can pray for, please leave it in the comments below. Let us begin our forecast tonight, because we have a great deal to go over. Starting with Winter Storm number 1. As I mentioned, this system is already beginning to move in, but we will begin our timeline with tomorrow morning. Now, the time shown is Eastern Time, so when it says 9 o'clock in the morning Eastern, that would be 8 o'clock in the morning for those in the Central Time Zone. We are going to look at the NAM model here to focus on the details. We can already see an area of heavy precipitation. It is appearing as a band of significant moisture moving across the Dakotas and starting to enter areas of Nebraska. Now, as we continue to move forward in time, we are advancing in about 6-hour intervals. By about 2 or 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, you can see that snow is starting to move into parts of Iowa. This also includes areas of extreme southwest Minnesota. And we have what appears to be a narrow band of snow, although it is not truly narrow, moving through parts of the Dakotas. This could be quite heavy snow where it is falling. However, some areas will have a sharp cutoff. For example, Rapid City is not getting anything, while Pierre is getting snow. We continue to move this into tomorrow evening. This is around 8 or 9 o'clock tomorrow night. Very heavy snow will begin to move into areas of Iowa. Now, I know you can see some green colouring around the blue. Blue indicates snow, and green typically indicates rain, but in this case, the green is also representing snow. So please just ignore that colour difference. There appears to be a bit of a wintry battleground setting up here in Omaha. I do believe this is rain farther south, and where you see the pink and purple, this could represent a wintry mix of some sleet and perhaps even some freezing rain. In fact, a little bit of ice is forecast for that region. Now, let us not completely ignore Wyoming over here. Some snow could be flying around in Casper, with a little bit of snow across the Rockies of Colorado. It is still snowing back in Bismarck and Pierre. But as we continue to move this forward, all the way into the middle of the night tomorrow night, around 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, it will be snowing in Minneapolis. A significant question is how far north this band of snow will get. It is still snowing back here in the Dakotas, and we even have a trailing area of snow in western Nebraska. And there is that wintry mix, let's say in Lincoln. It is snowing in Omaha on this model run, but a wintry mix of sleet, freezing rain, and maybe snow is possible in this area. This is because a low-pressure system is moving in, bringing a lot of warm air aloft. It might be cold enough at the surface for winter weather, but aloft, many of those snowflakes are melting. So let us shift our view a little bit more to the east and set this back in motion. Now, this is when the forecast becomes honestly fascinating to me. I have been speaking with some people in St. Louis on social media, and that area is quite complex. St. Louis is a challenging area to forecast. This is around 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning on Saturday morning. And please take note, this could be very heavy, wet snow in St. Louis. I am talking about snowflakes the size of cotton balls. I often joke, and I said it on social media earlier, about snowflakes the size of minivans. though not literally, of course. But this could be very heavy, wet snow to start your morning on Saturday in St. Louis. The question is, will it remain as snow? I do not believe it will. But let's continue the timeline. For Chicago, it will be snowing significantly at daybreak on Saturday. You can probably tell I enjoy talking about snow, as I live here in central South Carolina. We hardly ever see snow here, but I am certainly excited for all of you, though I know not everyone likes it. But this is heavy, wet snow in Des Moines, with Dubuque also getting snow. Davenport, Quincy, Chicago, Milwaukee, and Oshkosh are all in the path, and it is just starting to move into, let's say, Green Bay. Then we take it all the way to about midday on Saturday, around 11 o'clock in the morning. Around lunchtime, it will be snowing across almost the entirety of Iowa. It is still snowing back in Omaha and Lincoln. I will certainly forget to mention many areas, but Minneapolis? You are right on the northern fringe of the heaviest moisture, but it is definitely plenty cold enough to see snow. In Green Bay, it is snowing. Also in Madison. These darker corridors of color that you see right here indicate extremely heavy snow. But if you look down here at St. Louis, you can see how it starts off as snow and then changes to rain. So you might begin with a quick few inches, or maybe even several inches of heavy, wet snow. And then it transitions to a cold rain, which can be very depressing for some. Colder air will follow, however, and that will likely freeze up any snow that does fall, if you are a fan of that sort of thing. But if we continue to keep this in motion, folks, and I know this is moving somewhat slowly, but I like to go over all the details and the timeline. This is getting into about 4 or 5 o'clock on Saturday afternoon, and snow is basically overspreading the entirety of Michigan. This includes both upper and lower Michigan. Let's just back this up for a moment and discuss this timeline. Look at Indianapolis, a highly populated area. It starts off as heavy, wet snow on the NAM model. I know this looks green, but this will be starting as very large snowflakes. The same situation applies to Evansville. Much like in St. Louis, it could start as very heavy, wet snow. In fact, even areas down here in western Kentucky could begin with extremely heavy, wet snow. But then it will quickly change over to rain. And then we go all the way out to Saturday evening, and we have a full-fledged snowstorm across the Midwest and Great Lakes region. Chicago at this point. On Saturday evening, you will be right in the middle of a classic snowstorm. You all have been somewhat deprived of winter weather lately, and I say that on behalf of the winter weather fans. I know that many people up here are not fans of winter weather. I am a huge fan of it, as you all know. But Toledo and Detroit will be getting snow, and then we start to move into the middle of the night. This is as far out as we can see on the NAM model, from Saturday night into Sunday morning. This is at midnight, and this entire snowstorm is continuing. Peoria and Springfield are still seeing snow. Chicago is still snowing, as are Detroit and all of Michigan. And look how heavy this snow is in Cleveland. Canton and Columbus are even seeing snow. It is even snowing in areas of Cincinnati, and down here in the northern parts of Kentucky. And this is as far out as we can go on this particular model. We will now have to start where we left off. And as we continue to keep this in motion, we get into Sunday morning, and the last little bit of this storm begins to head east. It is still snowing for most of Michigan, but as you can tell, Ohio starts to switch over. You could start with heavy, wet snow, but then it will begin to change to just plain old rain before the cold air filters in behind it. And I do want to show some attention to the Northeast with this system, as it has trended a little bit colder. This is around midday on Sunday, and it does show precipitation moving in. This could be heavy, wet snow across New York State, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, northern Pennsylvania, and the areas of Pennsylvania known for cold air damming, like the Allegheny Mountains, as well as western Maryland, the highlands of West Virginia, and the Blue Ridge and Appalachian Mountains of Virginia. This pink color could indicate freezing rain. The orange suggests a mixture of sleet and freezing rain. As we start to get into Sunday evening, many of these areas could simply switch to plain rain. For the Interstate 95 corridor, it is just not your turn yet, but please stay tuned. I have a section of the video for you all. There may be a little glimmer of hope for the winter weather fans. But the interior northeast will be getting mainly snow, especially in those higher elevations, and then the cold air will filter in behind the system. We might see a period of lake effect snow behind it as well. Alright, now for the part that everyone wants to hear about, and let's make our way from west to east. I know I do not have a large number of people tuning in from Montana, but I want to be sure to include Montana in our forecast. So, for Montana, here is how much snow you can expect with this storm. You can pause the screen if you need to. And then we start to move east. Here is North Dakota. Bismarck is expecting 2 to 5 inches of snow, and Dickinson, 2 to 5. I am just trying to mention a couple of areas. Fargo looks to be just to the north of the heaviest snowfall. Now, let's move down to South Dakota. This is where things could begin to change a bit, with the potential for more heavy snow. And you all will have to remind me, even though you cannot since this is not a live broadcast. I need to pull up the watches and warnings map, just to show everyone who has winter storm watches, warnings, and winter weather advisories. But we have had an upgrade from a winter storm watch to a winter storm warning across areas of South Dakota over the last couple of hours. Pierre is forecast to get 2 to 6 inches of snow, Sioux Falls 4 to 6, Brookings 4 to 6, and Watertown 2 to 4. For Aberdeen, we are looking at 3 to 5 inches. Now, this is where the situation becomes a bit more complex. Omaha could see 3 to 8 inches of snow, while Lincoln's totals could range from an inch to a half foot. In Sioux City, we are forecasting 5 to 11 inches, and there is also a possibility of some ice in that area, perhaps a couple of tenths of an inch. Over in York, they are anticipating a tenth to a quarter of an inch of freezing rain. So this region is certainly a challenging one to forecast, as it could experience a wintry mix. Now, let us take a look at the southern half of Minnesota. For Minneapolis itself, we are anticipating 3 to 7 inches of snow. A winter weather advisory is currently in effect there, and I do believe it could be upgraded to a winter storm warning. The city is situated just north of the heaviest snowfall, so I strongly advise you to stay tuned for frequent updates. For the southern areas of Minnesota, accumulations could range from a half foot to a full foot of snow. As we shift our focus to Iowa, that state is preparing for a significant amount of heavy, wet snow. Indeed, a good portion of Iowa will likely receive at least a half foot of snow. The only areas that might see less are in the southwestern sections of the state, where the low pressure system will be very close. For Des Moines, we are forecasting 8 to 13 inches, and for Ames, 9 to 14. Fort Dodge has a similar outlook, with Waterloo expecting 9 to 13 inches, and Dubuque looking at 8 to 12. There is a chance for some light freezing rain in this area. We are talking about just a few hundredths of an inch of ice, so not a significant accumulation. More substantial freezing rain is possible in the southwestern parts of the state. Now, let us turn our attention to the Kansas City area. For northern Missouri, Kirksville could see 4 to 8 inches of snow, with 2 to 6 inches in Bethany and 1 to 5 in Maryville. Kansas City itself may begin with a wintry mix as this storm arrives. However, I am not expecting any heavy winter weather for the city proper. Moving northward into Wisconsin, Green Bay is looking at 6 to 8 inches of snow. The temperatures in this region are certainly cold enough. It is simply located too far north of the heaviest snowfall bands. Therefore, we can expect anywhere from 4 to 8 inches of snow across this area, with totals increasing the farther south you go, the more snow is forecast. Looking at specifics, Eau Claire could receive 3 to 6 inches, Madison 7 to 12, Platteville 8 to 12 inches, and La Crosse 6 to 10 inches. Please feel free to pause the screen if you need to at any point, folks. I try to present as many clear graphics as possible for you. I am committed to being one of the most detailed weather channels available, and I want to provide you with all the information you need. I understand that longer, more in-depth videos that last nearly 30 minutes are not for everyone, and I certainly appreciate that. However, providing this level of detail is the way I believe I can best serve all of you. Now, back to Wisconsin. Milwaukee is forecast to receive 9 to 18 inches of snow, and Janesville is expecting the same. That means nearly 1.5 feet of snow is possible in these areas, and we are even approaching the 20-inch mark in places like Port Washington. These are truly remarkable totals. It is important to note this is not from lake effect. This is a classic large snowstorm. The Quad Cities are expecting 8 to 12 inches, Freeport 8 to 13 inches, Princeton 8 to 12, and Peoria 7 to 11. Now, let us take a look at the latest information for Chicago. Alright, here we are. The current Chicago forecast is a bit conservative, and I understand their caution. Right now, they are calling for 6 to 8 inches of snow, while Rockford is expecting 8 to 12 inches. Sometimes these official graphics can be a bit temperamental, but I believe you can see the information clearly. The forecast for Joliet is 6 to 8 inches of snow. As I mentioned, Chicago could certainly see much more snow than this, as I believe forecasters are being cautious. Heading farther south in Illinois, Lincoln is expecting 6 to 12 inches, Bloomington 7 to 14, and Peoria is now forecast to receive 9 to 17 inches of snow. You may notice that some of these graphics differ slightly, and that is simply due to different update times. The farther south we go, the more uncertainty we have in the forecast. Litchfield is looking at 4 to 8 inches. And now we move down to the St. Louis area. Currently, St. Louis is forecast to receive a quick 2 to 4 inches of heavy, wet snow. However, I believe this event has the potential to catch people by surprise down there on Saturday morning. In tomorrow's videos, I will go over the atmospheric data for this area, but the conditions appear perfectly aligned for heavy, wet, pasty snow along the Interstate 70 corridor. This could be a very significant event. Therefore, I would continue to tune in for updates around the St. Louis area. Now, let us head back north into Michigan. More snow is on the way for the Upper Peninsula. Some of these totals are combining the ongoing lake effect snow with this incoming storm, so we do have to factor that in. A viewer correctly pointed out that I had overlooked Michigan in this morning's video, and my apologies for that. It can be a challenge when forecasts combine two different weather events. Nevertheless, Kalamazoo is forecast to receive 11 to 16 inches of snow, with 10 to 15 for Grand Rapids, and 4 to 10 for Flint. A great deal of snow is on the way. For Detroit, we are looking at 4 to 9 inches. I know our friends in Detroit who love the snow will be very pleased with this forecast. Now, for northern Indiana, this region is preparing for what looks to be a major winter storm. A significant amount of snow is on the way, with many areas forecast to receive from 1/2 foot to over 1 foot of snow. Indianapolis is a more difficult forecast, with totals ranging from 1 inch to 1/2 foot, though some models suggest the higher end is more likely. Travelling up the interstate, Lafayette could see 5 to 11 inches, and Marion 3 to 9 inches. South of Indianapolis, there is even more uncertainty. A few inches of snow are possible, too likely. Evansville, down at the bottom of your screen, is in a tricky location. It could get nothing, or perhaps an inch or two of snow. For Louisville, I would say the western to northern areas of Kentucky could see some light accumulations. It might only be a dusting, but some locations could receive an inch or two of snow. In northern Ohio, this forecast is a combination of lake effect and the approaching storm. This particular map only goes through 7 o'clock on Sunday morning, so these are not the final storm totals for that area. Final amounts could be a bit higher, but for now, Cincinnati is expecting about 1/2 inch of snow, Columbus about 1 inch, and Dayton 1 to 2 inches of snow. Now, turning to the northeast, the forecast is quite complex because we are combining ongoing lake effect snow with what is on the way from this weekend storm. So all the potential snowfall is merged together here. The main takeaway from this is that it will be an event for interior New England. The Interstate 95 corridor will not receive very much from this system. However, I am watching for a potentially hazardous wintry mix for portions of West Virginia. This also includes western Maryland, the Allegheny Mountains of Pennsylvania, Virginia, and even as far south as North Carolina. Indeed, there is a signal for ice on the European model, showing a few hundredths of an inch, perhaps up to a tenth of an inch. I do believe a difficult wintry mix will be possible here as we get into Sunday. We will have more details on that situation as they become available. Now, let's switch gears and talk about next week. This is for December 1st, next Monday, when we have another system to analyze. Some energy begins to come together to start our Monday morning, with some light to moderate snow across Colorado. This will also impact northern New Mexico and Kansas. As we move forward, we see this moisture attempting to connect, bringing some light snow to Oklahoma, eastern Kansas, and into Missouri. Then, the moisture could consolidate over northern Arkansas, where we might see some snow, though a wintry mix is more likely. A wintry mix is even possible in places like Memphis and perhaps Little Rock. As we continue on, you can see heavier snow showing up in Tennessee, and I believe that is a very plausible scenario. Now, if we look at the European model in the eastern United States, we can see this system begin to strengthen. This is for Tuesday morning. It will be all rain across the southeast, but you can see the areas shaded in pink, which represent freezing rain in the regions prone to cold air damming, like the North Carolina mountains and foothills. At the same time, that is snow in Middle Tennessee and Kentucky, and it could be heavy snow. We will have to watch how this unfolds. There is an area of light snow to the north, associated with a 997 millibar low off the mid-Atlantic coast, which is certainly strong enough to produce significant weather. The main question will be if the cold air is in place. The Carolinas and most of Virginia, including the Delmarva Tidewater area, look to be mainly rain, but for northern Virginia, that is snow, as it is for West Virginia, parts of Ohio, and eastern Kentucky, and that is all snow. As we continue to move forward, snow is indicated for New York City, northern New Jersey, eastern Pennsylvania, Maryland, and even the District of Columbia and Boston. This would be a heavy, wet snow from a 992 millibar low offshore. If this forecast is correct, it would be a major snowstorm for Boston on Tuesday night and Wednesday morning of next week. We will need to sort out the details. Now, what about the American GFS model? Its latest run is available now, and we can take it all the way through Monday morning. This model is more assertive, with a wintry mix in Arkansas, and does not bring the snow quite as far south into Oklahoma. It does show a band of moderate snow moving through Kansas and extending into northern Missouri. This system will pass over Kansas City, and if it develops as projected for Monday, could bring some accumulating snow to areas around St. Louis. My apologies, I meant to emphasize Kansas City, though St. Louis could also see some activity. Farther south, this is shaping up to be a difficult wintry mix for central and northern Arkansas. We will need to watch carefully to see if this particular forecast model is correct. From there, the system progresses eastward. Now, let's refresh our information and look at the GFS model. We have already discussed the first storm system. Now, here comes the second one, which appears to be a rather strong low-pressure system. The center of this low pressure is tracking directly across the Appalachians, which means this will be an all-rain event for the Mid-South. For areas farther north, this will simply be more snow falling on top of the snow we received from the previous system. You can see a classic signal of cold air damming, where cold air gets trapped against the eastern slopes of the Appalachian Mountains, particularly in the foothills. As we move into Tuesday morning, the low-pressure center will be cutting across the Carolinas, setting the stage for a significant winter storm for Ohio. This storm will also affect Pennsylvania, with a challenging wintry mix. The forecast even shows a possibility of a wintry mix in New York City, although it should be mainly rain there due to the proximity of the low-pressure center. Southern New England will likely experience significant mixing of precipitation. However, for the interior northeast, where cold air is already established, this has the potential to become a very large snowstorm for you. After that system passes, we will need to carefully monitor what follows. Now, let's examine the potential for snow from this event using the European Ensemble model, which shows us data in 3-day periods. It indicates a footprint of snow across parts of the Central Plains and Missouri. We could see 1 to 2 inches of snow from this, which is enough to warrant winter weather advisories. This particular forecast covers what is expected this weekend. Next, we will look at what could happen as we move into early next week. There is a slight signal, based on a blend of all the forecast models, for a few hundredths of an inch of ice in Arkansas, Missouri, and generally in the mid-Mississippi Valley region. Now, let us turn our attention to the forecast signal for the eastern United States. That large area of snow you see here represents what is currently happening. Then, as you see another area develop, this indicates a strong signal for a significant winter storm risk next week. The models are showing an average of a couple of inches of snowfall across the Ohio Valley, but a several-inch snowfall average across the Northeast. This even includes Northern Virginia and the Mid-Atlantic states. So that is a very substantial signal. My apologies, I am briefly distracted by my dog barking in the background, and I do apologize for that interruption. As I was saying, this is a very strong signal for the Northeast. We are even seeing a 4 to 5 inch average snowfall showing up across parts of New England. That is quite a reliable indicator. Now, if we also examine the potential for ice from this system, there is a slight signal for icing as well. This appears to be the ice potential associated with the midweek storm as we head into next week. This is also a combined signal from both the weekend storm and what could develop next week across the Mid-Atlantic. We will continue to analyse the data as it comes in to get a clearer picture. For now, our primary focus is the storm system arriving this weekend. Afterward, we will be able to provide a much more detailed forecast for the potential winter storm next week. So, let us discuss the overall weather pattern. I have good reason to believe that the month of December will continue to bring cold Arctic air down into the lower 48 states, and with it, the potential for more winter storms. As we look ahead to next week, you can see the areas of lower pressure indicated here in blue and green. The areas in red, orange, and pink represent higher pressure. I do apologize, I seem to have forgotten to activate my drawing tool, so I am unable to highlight this for you. I may try to bring it up in just a moment. But what you are seeing is a signature of a ridge of high pressure building up into Alaska. In meteorology, we refer to this as a negative Eastern Pacific Oscillation, or EPO. This pattern helps to push cold air southward into an active storm track. You can see this small extension in blue right here, which represents lower pressure. That is the signal for our storm system next week. The cold air source will then feed into the moisture associated with that area of lower pressure. As we continue to look further ahead in time, past next week, and I know this is quite far out in the forecast period, we see another weather signature emerging. It is still too early to be certain if this will be a cold and dry pattern. This is projected for the period around the 6th, 7th, and 8th of the month. So, for next weekend, you can see this trough, or dip in the jet stream, appearing on the European Ensemble model. The European model is one of our most reliable tools for long-range forecasting. It is showing a strong signal for a trough digging deep into the eastern United States, with a corresponding ridge of high pressure building out west. This pattern once again would bring cold air and the potential for another storm system next weekend. As we look even further out, we enter a less certain timeframe in forecasting. However, what I consistently see is a persistent trough over Canada and the northern parts of the United States. You can think of this entire blue area as an enormous source of cold air, almost like a piece of the polar vortex has broken away. This means any storm systems that develop to the south will have a ready supply of cold air to tap into, which increases the risk for winter weather. Even when we look as far out as the 10th of the month, we see some movement in the pattern. But one feature remains quite clear: this large mass of blue representing cold air to our north. Therefore, I believe we will continue to see waves of cold air coming down into the lower 48 states. Essentially, because of this vast reservoir of cold air located to our north, we are setting up a very specific pattern. Now, this blue colouring signifies a trough, which is a pattern that brings the cold air with it. It appears that what is happening, folks, is that we are establishing a very deep and persistent source of cold air. In a way, you could say we are creating a glacier of cold air that will be available to us. We are essentially solidifying the cold in the region from which our Arctic air originates, which is right up here. Often, when cold air travels south from the higher latitudes, it can warm up slightly along the way. In this case, however, that may not happen. In fact, the air could even become colder as it moves. To put it simply, it looks as though we have a very strong and sustained source of cold air to our north that could affect us multiple times throughout the month of December. This pattern appears to hold all the way through the 10th or 11th of the month, and if we examine the European Ensemble Model's temperature forecast compared to the seasonal average, you will see the blue and green colours. These indicate colder temperatures, or more precisely, temperatures that are below average for this time of year. For example, if your average temperature for the day is 55 degrees, and the forecast calls for 10 degrees below average, your high temperature would be around 45 degrees. I hope that explanation is clear. Now, the warmer colours you see, those represent above average temperatures. Let us begin by looking at the forecast for next Tuesday. You will notice that below average temperatures are expected to continue for the central and eastern United States. You may recall we were recently discussing the potential for a very warm start to December. You can put that thought aside because that is no longer in the forecast. Looking ahead about 1 week from today, it still appears to be cold across the eastern United States, while the western United States looks quite warm. The question is, will we warm up after that? It is possible, but I am not certain. In fact, I am not confident that a warm-up will occur. As we look toward next weekend, another pool of cold air is projected to drop down into the eastern United States. It does appear there will be a battle with a ridge of high pressure, but even as we head into the second week of December, around the 8th, 9th and 10th, another push of cold air arrives, and the pattern continues. If you take a broader view of the map, you can see that our cold air consistently originates from the same region to our north. It looks to be one wave of cold air after another. This reinforces the pattern that I was just showing you. Now, something has just occurred to me, and I find it quite remarkable. I am going to bring this up now. I realise I have not yet shown you the current watches and warnings for the winter storm that is approaching this weekend. However, we will move on for now. What I find truly puzzling is the official 8 to 14-day temperature outlook. I must say, I believe this forecast is incorrect. I always look forward to seeing this outlook in the winter to see if it supports what our forecast models are showing. This afternoon's update, however, was not very encouraging, and I do believe it is inaccurate. This particular 8 to 14-day temperature outlook covers the period from the 5th through the 11th of the month. I do not believe we will see above-average temperatures in this area of the southeast. In fact, I am quite confident that we will experience below-average temperatures in this region. Absolutely. I believe the forecasters should have extended this blue area, indicating colder temperatures, much farther to the south. I am not certain what data led them to that conclusion. If anything, I would have forecast near normal temperatures extending all the way down into Alabama, Georgia, and Mississippi. However, we can debate the fine details of this indefinitely. Now, this is the 6 to 10-day temperature outlook. This covers the period from the 3rd through the 7th. This one seems a bit more reasonable, although I might have adjusted this warmer area slightly. It was certainly an unusual outlook from the Climate Prediction Centre today, and I do not fully understand the reasoning behind it. Next, let's talk about the MJO. I know this has been a longer update, and I appreciate you staying with me. I simply enjoy discussing the weather with you all. Speaking of the Madden-Julian Oscillation, or MJO, we have previously mentioned, and again I cannot draw on the screen, that phases 4, 5, and 6 are typically our warm phases. We are currently in phase 7. This phase favours cold air moving into the United States, but it often has to contend with a ridge of high pressure over the southeast and the southern tier of the country. This can sometimes extend into the eastern United States as well. However, phase 7 does favour a significant push of cold air, which is precisely what we are experiencing. Today is the 27th, and we should be in phase 7. Phases 8, 1, and 2 are our classic cold phases, and folks, we are heading directly toward phase 8. The latest European model shows us moving into it by next week and becoming fully established in phase 8 shortly after. And let me tell you, for the month of December, phase 8 typically brings a cold and wintry weather pattern to the central and eastern United States, and indeed for almost the entire country. So we are getting into a very favourable pattern for winter weather. What I believe is happening is that the forecast models are having a very difficult time with this transition. A truly difficult time. Progression of the Madden-Julian Oscillation and its effects. It seems to be a combination of high latitude blocking, a stretched polar vortex, and the sudden stratospheric warming. That whole complex situation I decided to stop discussing about a week ago. Frankly, I do not believe we have a firm enough understanding of that particular event to speak on it with confidence. I can certainly speak for myself, and from what I have gathered, there is a great deal of uncertainty among experts regarding the sudden stratospheric warming. It seems nobody has a complete grasp on it yet, which is why I have set that topic aside for now. However, what we do know for certain is that there has been a significant disruption over the polar region. This disruption is what dislodges Arctic air, pushing it southward. When you combine that with our progression toward phase 8 of the Madden-Julian Oscillation, the outlook becomes quite interesting indeed. That is the latest update I have for you. I truly appreciate all of you watching, and I do hope this forecast reaches you, as I was quite enthusiastic to share it. Now, I have noticed that these updates have not been reaching as many people lately. I am not certain of the reason. Perhaps it is because a large portion of my audience resides in the south, and talk of northern snow is not of immediate interest. It is hard to say for sure. Nevertheless, I hope these discussions begin to reach a wider audience, because I genuinely enjoy bringing this information to you. So, God bless you all, have a truly wonderful night, and we will talk again tomorrow morning.